Good day again, viewers, and welcome to the program Agriculture on the Move. My name, Phillip Sydney, your host. Today, this program is specific to banana farmers and, of course, plantain farmers in St. Lucia. We're discussing proper agronomic practices in banana cultivation / plantain cultivation. What I mean by agronomic practices, those are activities that you must carry out. I say again, I impress on that. You must carry out to ensure that you optimize your output, that is your production. And if increased production is more money in your pocket. With me today is a gentleman with a wealth of experience. He is not new to the ministry. He is Mr. Lucius Alexander, who is an agronomist, and his forte is in pest and disease management. He's attached to the banana productivity improvement project in the Department of Agriculture. Welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sydney.
You don't mind if I call you Goatee? Everybody know you Goatee? Well, Mr. Alexander, I think it's important now because people believe that banana production is dead, and we know that is not so. There is tremendous, improvements in terms of marketing. The market is there for bananas, so obviously we need to ensure that we assist our farmers to increase their productivity and quality, of course, for the markets, both locally, regionally, and of course, extra-regionally, okay? Just to give a little background, what's the mandate of that unit?
Well, simply as the name explains, is really to sustain the production, which we already have, improve it, and to improve the productivity. That means you're going to get more fruit per acre, per unit area. So we really need to improve the production base, and especially the quality of the fruits, because farming is an economic activity. Each farmer is like a businessman, and he expects when he invests his money, he gets some profit back, or he did not occur a loss. So we've to please the market or to comply with the market, the intention is to produce a standard quality fruit, which would be which could be used for all the different target markets, international, regional, and local. So because, sometimes farmers say because they're not selling to the UK, they wouldn't comply with certain standards and they would neglect the farm to a certain extent. Mm-hmm. But our mandate is to make sure all banana and plantain farmers get to that level where at any time the fruit could be marketable to all the host of consumers that are available out in the market for us. Very good.
In order to attain that level of output, there are certain prerequisites that must be attained. We talk about agronomic practices, good agricultural practices. Can you give us and tell us exactly what are the activities that are expected by the farmer to ensure that he optimizes output?
Well, in the industry, there's a terminology called good agricultural practices. And the intention of that is to address the economic, because as I said, the farmer is a businessman, the environmental issues, everybody around the world is concerned with the environment and contamination and good health, and also to sustain the farm business as a whole. And also, on the farm, there are certain activities which pose a risk to the workers themselves, and these have to be addressed. So it encompasses all these things. Also, there are basic items or areas which you have to address. For example, the soil, which needs to be productive. It needs to have enough nutrients to build a plant, because plants need food. And also you need water, enough water. As you know, sometimes we have climate issues that might affect the availability of water. And in our St. Lucia, we do not have much irrigation system, so we'll have to learn to harvest water. And there are also issues with pests and disease. As you know, we have the black sigatoka, which has given us a challenge for a while. And the other conventional pests and diseases like borers, nematodes, thrips, mites, a whole list of them which we have to address, or which we also have to use pesticides. Also, there are other pests and diseases out there that we have to make sure that we not bring into St. Lucia, which are not yet in St. Lucia. For example, in St. Vincent, there's a disease called the Moco disease, which has devastated the St. Vincent industry. And there's another disease called Fusarium wilt, which is called also termed as TR4, which is very devastating. It is not in our region as yet, but all the islands in the region are preparing themselves in the event that disease comes in, because if it comes in, there's no treatment you could give. There's no chemical that could cure that disease. So it's an issue of quarantine, cleanliness, and farmers being aware that they do not have to bring in any planted material which is not accounted for by our quarantine officers, among other things.
That's a good point. And the reason why I think I would want to dwell a little on it, black sigatoka was again in our neighboring island for a while.
Yeah.
And we kept talking about black sigatoka, preventative measures, phytosanitary restrictions, etc. But it was here and we did not even know about it, am I correct?
It was there for a while because it's very similar to the yellow sigatoka, which we had there fighting with all along all the years before. But the difference between yellow and black sigatoka is other than the technical aspect, is very simple. Yellow sigatoka did not affect plantain. Black sigatoka affects plantain. So plantain is what you call an indicator plant. So even though you're not sure, you're not a scientist, but once you see you have leaf spot on plantain, you know you have black sigatoka. You could be 90%, 99% sure that you have black sigatoka in your area. And you could see it would impact the bananas significantly. You would see the leaves getting blacker. At first you used to see these yellow spots, but now we'll get it a dark brown, dark black spots, and it will be very difficult to control. You might have to spray more frequently, and you'd have to do more sanitation, because at first you see the farmers would leave these spots on the field, but now with black sigatoka you cannot afford to leave these spots because they produce more spores and infect the plants more quickly, and they develop more quickly. So when you have black sigatoka, you always have to be on the ball and make sure that you respond and you do your recommended treatment on time. Timeliness of this treatment is very important, because if the time has passed, and even though you spray after, the stage of the disease will not, the pesticide will not be able to control effectively the disease at that stage, because it would have changed its form during that 1 week or 2 weeks where you were supposed to spray, and you let that pass, because it changes, it has different stages. And so if you, at that stage when the pesticide is recommended, it's recommended for a particular stage of the disease. So when it changes the next stage, another pesticide would have to be recommended. So as you know, in the industry, we have 5 different fungicides which we use, and depending on the stage of the disease, and in the particular area, we make a recommendation for that particular pesticide. And sometimes you find farmers do not comply. They hold that chemical there for a week or 2 later, and then they spray when it's too late. And they say, oh, our control wasn't too good, but once you apply on time, you're guaranteed to get good control.
But there are areas sometimes where farmers, apart from spraying, because there are certain environmental factors that will allow the spore to grow, which the farmers can prevent. What are those things that they should
As
do?
I mentioned, sanitation is very important. That means when you see the disease is identified in 5 stages: stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4. Stage 5 would be when you see all these big black spots. Stage 1, you barely see it. Stage 2, you see a few spots. Stage 3, and it progresses this way, right? But sanitation is important. Farmers would cut the leaves or cut parts of the leaf and just drop it on the ground. But the spores are still alive. Right. The leaf is dead, but the spores are still alive on the leaf.
Hold that spot, because we are due for our first break. You're watching Agriculture on the Move. Stay tuned. We'll be back soon.
For effective chemical treatment of black sigatoka, practice routine preventative maintenance of all tools and equipment, especially the mist blower, to ensure proper functioning. Clean sprayer after use, and service the machine regularly, as recommended by the manufacturer. Whenever you are using pesticides to control black sigatoka disease, personal protection and safety measures must be followed. Spray operators must always wear proper protective gear. Before or when handling pesticides, put on your overalls, respirator, goggles, boots, and gloves to avoid contact with the skin, inhalation, and ingestion of pesticides.
For more information on how to treat and control black sigatoka on your farm or in your backyard garden, contact the Black Sigatoka Management Unit at 451-5491, 451-5894, or email bpmu@candw.lc. This message is brought to you by the Ministry of Agriculture in collaboration with the International Cooperation and Development Fund of the Republic of China on Taiwan.
Welcome back to the program. Mr. Alexander, before the break, we were talking about the conditions that are favorable for the production of spores of the black sigatoka, and apparently a lot of farmers probably don't understand. They don't know what certain things they do or they don't do can, of course, result in the proliferation of the disease. You talk about the sanitation. Could you expand a little more on that?
Yes, as I said, when the disease has reached a certain stage in the plant, it expresses itself as these marks or these black spots on the leaf. So you'd have to cut out part of the leaf. We call that surgery. Sometimes when it has just started, you do not need to cut the whole leaf. But if it has already engulfed the whole leaf, you need to cut the whole leaf. But when you are disposing of the leaf, you should not just allow it to just spread all over the ground. What is recommended is that you pile them up in some big piles, and then it will suppress the piling of leaves on one on top of the other, will suppress the disease at the bottom.
All right.
So you'll have a lesser inoculum, a lesser extent of disease to deal with.
Okay.
Also, the issue of soil moisture and humidity. Humidity strongly affects the development of the disease. So you must have good drainage. No water must be slipping in the drains. Your plants should not be too close together. I know a lot of farmers like high density planting because they feel they get more bunches, but sometimes this predisposes the plants to more disease also. Also, your plant must be healthy. You give fertilizer so it will outgrow the disease, because the disease takes at least 3 or 4 weeks to really fully develop. But also the plant itself takes at least a week or up to 2 weeks to give you a new leaf. So you must have new leaves before the disease develops. So the plant must outgrow the disease. So you cannot have a weak or sick ill plant to fight the disease. So you must always fertilize, clean the area, spray on time, and always monitor. The farmer should be familiar with the disease, and because he himself would know when things are flaring up, because he knows the difference. Also, with the issue of the humidity in the wet season, you'll get more of that disease, and in the dry season, it would be less of a problem. You'll have to take, if you spray every month in the wet season, you might spray every 6 weeks. So you'd see the disease is not too prevalent under these conditions, among other things.
The question of spraying, a farmer now cannot just come to you all and say he wants to spray. Give us because I know there's a scientific method in terms of the spray regime. Tell us a little more about that.
Well, in all pest and disease issues, you'd have to monitor. You'd have to monitor to know, number one, if you have a problem, if it is a disease problem, if it's a pest problem, and then you need to know if there's what you call a limit or threshold. So not because you see you have, take it for example for borers. If you're on your farm and you see one borer, that won't cause you to go on and buy 5 liters of reagent of an insecticide and spray the whole 5 acres. So there's a threshold level where you need to take action. And when that threshold is reached, you have to intervene one time. So the banana project, the banana productivity project, this is one of the responsibilities to go on and survey all the farms, and they give a weekly report for all the areas. Depending on the area which needs the immediate treatment, these farmers in these areas are requested to come to the facility where oil is dispensed and the oil fungicide mix, and they are asked to spray. And even though in areas which are not asked to spray, they might have a few farms that are delinquent or just have a predisposition to the disease, they are required to come in also on the recommendation of the extension officer. So everybody would be catered for. And so oil mixes expense every week, and once you are in need of a treatment, it will be available to the farmer.
I think the farms are looking good now, but you still have a little bottleneck where persons with a few plantain plants, banana plants in their backyard, and they don't really care about the sanitation aspect, and that can be a breeding ground for the disease. How do you all approach that?
Yeah, we are also facing some constraints. Apart from what you mentioned, there are abandoned farms, semi-abandoned farms, farms that are left unattended. The owners go out of the island, or they give up, or they go to other trades, and they forget about these farms. Now, the nature of the disease, it produces the spores into the air, just blows up into the air. So even though you're taking care of your farm on your side, and I'm not taking care of a farm on my side, the spores are going to grow into your farm, and you're going to have just as a bigger problem as me. Other than that, you have backyard farms, as you mentioned, which farmers not tend to give any big set of chemicals, and just how you call them, other mixed farming, where you have bananas, plantain mixed with dashing and different crops. Farmers don't really take care of them, but it's a problem. So the inoculum depends on the area, depending on the situation. The inoculum would infect, and the time of the year also, it could cause a problem. So we also have to encourage these farmers to take some action. Also, we were at one point collaborating with CIRA, that is the French research agency, to look at some banana varieties that are resistant and tolerant to the disease, and then we would encourage the farmers to use them in their backyard farms where they do not intend to spray. So that would help reduce the inoculum level. So these are some of the strategies we're hoping that farmers will accept and adopt over time, because the use of chemicals alone is something that has been discouraged worldwide. So if you could use the varieties, cultural practices, cleaning up, having a healthy plant, and then some of these activities, you could actually help reduce the inoculum level and help the commercial section of the industry in producing this good quality food that you'd want to sell, and help the farmers be viable as business operators.
There are other factors that the farmer must do on farm, as far as maybe personal hygiene and water, availability of water for washing hands. That takes you to harvesting. Take us through that stage.
Well, in production, we have the pre-harvest situation, where you have to have good soil. Also, you must have the pH of the soil is very important, because even though you put fertilizer and your soil is acidic or alkaline, you might not have the availability of the nutrients. So every now and then a farmer has to make sure he has a soil test, so he could be guided as to what kind of fertilizer he actually needs. Now also there's the issue of the other pest and disease, which would, like nematodes. Nematodes would affect the roots, and again, if you give fertilizer and you have poor roots, it cannot take it. Water, as you mentioned, is very important, even though you put fertilizer, because the fertilizers the plant feeds itself through the use of solutions, water. So if you have on a dry soil, and you could even have all the fertilizers, the plant will not make use of the fertilizer. So these are some of the basic things. Also, as I said, the pre-harvest. So that means you've seen about the agronomic things, making sure the plant is big, healthy, and strong, and growing. But at the point of harvest, you also need to know there's a pre-harvest interval. So if, for example, if you spray a chemical today, you cannot harvest it today, or you cannot harvest it tomorrow. Each chemical has a certain limit of days before you could harvest it and bring it to the market. But also, what is important, because we're growing the bananas for the market, so we have to make sure that it is harvested and packaged and transported in a very hygienic situation. The farms have to be hygienic, the operators have to be hygienic. You cannot have dirty clothes and dirty people and no facilities for washing and cleaning on your farm, because if you not have that, you may not be certified to export bananas.
Okay, hold that point again. We'll do for a second break.
All right.
You're watching Agriculture on the Move. Stay tuned.
Pour contrôler maladie cigatoka noue, il nécessaire et bien important pour tenir tout équipement particulier machine sprayer en bonnes conditions. Toujours nettoyer machine après ou servi et mettez en condition bon service même quand l'usine recommandé pour chenni. Depuis ou ka servi chimique pour contrôler maladie figue cigatoka noir, il est absolument important pour protéger corps et prendre en chaque précaution. Opérateur ces machines sprayer ni pour servir habillement qui caille bien protéger yo. Servi overall, goggles, boots et gloves pour empêcher chimique toucher la peau et bien expirer.
Pour plus d'informations à sous manière pour traiter et contrôler maladie cigatoka noir, à sous plantation et bien jardin ou pour ça téléphoner département pour ménager cigatoka noir à numéro 45 54 et bien 45 58 94 et bien email yo à bpmu@candw.lc. Commission Salak a sorti Hod Ministère de l'Agriculture ensemble avec Fonds Coopération Internationale et Développement Hod Pays République la Chine Taïwan.
Welcome back. The farmer has to be concerned now because more than ever the consumer is important. He needs to know what he eats. He needs to know the origin of the fruit and probably what chemicals are used on the fruit also. So we're becoming health conscious, okay?
Very much.
The farmer has to be certified. Take us through that process.
Well, the main certification body is recognized as an agency called Global GAP. The GAP means good agricultural practices. So it's a global arrangement between the farmer, the retailers, the consumers, and they have set standards, just like we have discussed a while ago, to make sure that the farmer is au courant and aware as to the requirements of the market they are going to deliver. So the farmer needs to comply. In addition, you may know that in the banana industry, there are about 20 different pesticides that are used in the soil, on the fruit, for different insects, for the black cigatoka we mentioned. And the consumers and the retailers need to know that these farmers and farm operators know how to use these chemicals because they do not want chemical contamination with the fruit. That's why hygiene is very important. So one of the key aspects of the certification, other than the operation of the farm itself has to be certified, but the workers have to be trained and they have to be issued a certificate to show that they have been trained on certain aspects. They know what the chemicals are about, how to measure the chemicals, how to mix it, how to apply, how to protect themselves, the particular protective gear they have to use for each particular chemical, because not all the chemicals are very deadly. There are some less than others. But you need to know what protection you could do for yourself. You also need to know how to dispose of extra chemical you might have, or if you have chemical in store, how are you going to store it?
Yes.
If there's an emergency, how are you going to have you made arrangements for emergencies and accidents? Are the workers tested annually to see if there are any residues of chemical in the blood system? So all these have to be complied. So once you have complied to this thing, we have a unit in St. Lucia called the Standard Certification Unit, which is sanctioned by NFT on Windfresh, and they are the ones who apply this standard and check on the farmers. So the farmers have to be trained, and they have to show the capacity that they have learned, and they have to express it on the farm. And also the issue of containers, empty containers, because the law is that you cannot use empty pesticide containers for any other use but for storage of that same only chemical. And this is not even encouraged. You cannot burn it, you cannot dump it anywhere. You have to destroy it so that it can never be used for any other use. Because remember before we used to have this little gramoxone, plastic thing, everybody used to have their water, their kerosene,
drinking water in it,
and they had to ban these things.
That's dangerous.
So some of these things are very important. And there's what you call the control points criteria that is listed in the book or the documentation on Global GAP, which all the farmers have to be familiar with and comply with. because there are auditors who come from locally, as I said, from the SCU unit, and we have external auditors sent by the marketing agencies to give you unmentioned calls. They just come into your farm or come into your agency and just inspect your farm and operations to see if you're compliant with these health and issue safeties, because food safety is very critical for marketing and export. On our end, we're worried about production and productivity and more fruit. But on the consumer's end, they're worried about food safety. And it has to be clean, it has to be pure, because what happens is that when the fruits go over to the UK or to the external market, they test it for minimum residue limits, because any residue on a fruit, when they test it, number one, they know if you have used the correct pesticide, if you have used it at the correct rate, and if there's any impropriety in applying the use of chemicals. And they could also detect if you have used a chemical that you should have not have used.
Wow.
Okay? So a lot of farmers take chances and do stuff, but they need to be aware that there's a monitoring. And some of them are very familiar, because every week WinFresh gets this report. And as you know, every farmer could be identified because the box has a barcode. And they could tell you which farmer has committed the crime. And sometimes the whole region could be punished for that. Or sometimes the whole island could lose its license to sell the bananas to whatever market. Okay. Right. So that's why the certification is important. And if you not attend these training sessions, you as a worker will not be certified, and the farm itself will not be certified, and the farmer would not be allowed to sell his fruit to whatever available market that it is. So it is very important that the awareness, farmers they have to know. For example, you see farmers or workers spraying dangerous chemicals do not have boots, do not have respirator. Some of them who have to be washing the fruit in the tubs and stuff, they not have gloves. And these gloves need to be up to your elbow level. They say, oh, I don't like, but you always have to be impressing that on them. Yes, it's a threat to themselves. Because if once a pesticide contacts your skin, that's it. It goes into your blood system, and you might be susceptible to, it could cause cancers, and prostate cancer, cervical cancer, all the cancers you could think of. And it is a risk. So, as I said, this is a concern also for the consumers, because they not want to know that you're producing something for them and you're actually killing yourself, or you're harming yourself in the process of doing it. So they will not accept food from you. So you have to be aware of such things. So the certification is important in monitoring the health and safety component and the occupational health and safety of the workers who are involved in the industry.
Well said, sir. We have come to the end, comrade. I want to thank you for being here, and I hope that, of course, the farmers will continue to hear you, and they'll continue to do the right things so that they increase their productivity. Thank you again.
Thank you also, Mr. Sydney. I hope that I've made some contribution.
You have.
And the farmers would appreciate that, and the industry as a whole would understand what it takes to be able to produce and improve the productivity, and to create or to produce safe food and fruits for the market.
Thanks, man.
You're welcome.
You've been watching Agriculture on the Move, and with me was Mr. Lucius Alexander, who's an agronomist and is attached to the Ministry of Agriculture on the new banana project. Thank you again for viewing, and remember, agriculture is our business, and eat fresh. St. Lucia's best. I'm Phillip Sydney. Take care. Goodbye. Thank you, sir.
Agriculture on the Move.
Agricole mouvement.
Agriculture on the Move.
Agricole en mouvement.
Agriculture on the Move.
Agricole en mouvement.
Agriculture on the Move.
Agricole en mouvement.